And so how long, so you drank 4 months after you got back from the mission, and how long were you drinking from that point on?
I didn't really, it was often. I wouldn't say it was like a huge problem, but for me it was just destroying me. But I drank all the way up to, I married my wife, 2 years after getting back, and I was drinking through that off and on. She came home from work one day and caught me with a 40 in a paper bag and listening to Tupac at the house, and
I don't know which is worse.
I mean, the fact that you got a returned missionary drinking a 40 out of a paper bag listening to Tupac.
In Hooper,
yeah.
it was
there's a lot of conflict going on there.
Yeah, pretty gangster moment. And so this is your beautiful wife right here, right?
It is, yes.
And so what was her thoughts when you were drinking?
Man.
You can go, Jaleesa, you can answer. What were your thoughts?
I don't know. I think I was a little confused. I only saw him once, but we didn't really date too much here, so I didn't know that part. You
didn't know the pre-story.
Yeah, I didn't know, and you don't. It happens to everybody but you. So I thought he was kind of maybe a little depressed, and that is why he kind of I didn't really thought too much about it, just like one time type of thing. But yeah.
But it wasn't a one-time type of thing.
No, it was very hidden. I would drink. I remember the day before she had our first kid, the night we went out to see a movie or something. I was drunk, went over to the neighbors and drank a few shots real quick, and then went out with her. And so no, it wasn't. And the funny thing is, I didn't love what alcohol did to me. I really didn't. As far as the physical, the being drunk, the high that comes from alcohol is not my preferred. It's not my DLC, but it was just something I could get and hide without many people knowing. I'd have very select spots. I could go buy it. I could do it, and a lot of people, I didn't have to go to a doctor and get a script, and I could hide it.
More accessible.
And
so you drank for a while, but that's not your DOC. Your DOC ended up being what?
My DLC is opioids. Started off with painkillers, and that's actually, so a few years, we fast forward a few years, and I worked in construction. I still work in construction, but I was a framer, and that is it's hard.
It's taxing on the body.
Very taxing on the body. And I ended up injuring my shoulder. I tore my bicep tendon off my shoulder, and I got, and so up to this point, in the construction world also, there's a lot of drugs. And so I'm finding people that have, I have a little extra in my script. You could have them. So I'm getting these pills, and it started to say, wow, I can work better. I'm not hurting as bad, the little stuff. And I start making up in my head, I would wake up and I'd have a little pain in my ankle, and I couldn't walk. It was the worst pain ever. And I'd talk to a bunch of guys at work. They'd get me something, pain, and I could all of a sudden work. And so even the lies, I started to believe my own lies. The ankle pain wasn't that bad, but then the pill made it that much better, and I felt better. So get my shoulder surgery, and that was the first time I had access to pills, as many as I wanted. Took them, and I abused that. I got scripts all the time. I was telling them it was hurting, it wasn't working. I figured out that, these don't work for me, and so they could prescribe you another one. You could keep the other one. I was like, man. So I had all this access to pills, and that's where I physically got addicted to them, but also mentally. I loved it. I loved it, and I loved the access. And then that got cut off. A smart doctor. I think he saw the signs, and it just got cut off one day. I went in and asked, just normal, and he's like, no, we aren't filling your script anymore. So it was a few months after that, I found a guy that was over script and would sell me 60 to 100 pills a month, and so I had this access.
Now, we've got your wife here. Did she know that you were abusing the pain pills?
No, at all.
She had no idea.
And how long had you been abusing them for?
So up to this point, or during the surgery, I definitely abused them all the way for about 3 or 4 months. And then I found this guy, and it never stopped from that point. So I never stopped. Once I had him and I could buy him from him and get access to him, I had him.
Did your drinking continue along with the pills, or did you just switch over?
No, I switched over. I switched over pretty quick. Because like I said, I enjoyed it more. I could go talk. No one knew. I didn't have to hide anything. You just swallow a pill. It doesn't smell. It doesn't taste. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. So, a turning point. So this had gone on for quite a few years. We had our daughter. We had another girl, and then we had our boy. And it got to a point when we had my first son that it sunk in, wow, I have a problem. That's a few years into it. And so I ended up, I was snorting them. I was crushing up, snorting them. I was abusing them very bad by now. And I remember we're in the room. My wife's in labor with my boy, and I was in the bathroom, and I got so loaded in that bathroom that I came out, and I remember I thought everybody in the room was looking at me. I thought the doctor kept looking at me like, what is wrong with this guy? And later that night, I was holding my little boy, and I couldn't remember anything. I could not remember that day. And that's when it sunk in. I got a problem. I got to do something. And so my wife was up at the hospital. When she came home, I told her my kidneys were killing me because I said I'm done. And so this is the first time I went through physical withdrawal. And I said I'm done. I went.
You said that to yourself?
Me.
Just
said
to yourself?
That to myself. Okay. So I stopped and cold turkey, and I was using quite a bit. And so a day into being done and not using, withdrawals kicked in, and it was absolutely insane. I thought something was wrong with me, so I went to a doctor, and the doctor told him, first time I was honest about it, told the doctor what was going on, and he said, well, just don't use anything for a week, and you'll be good. Mm. It'll take you a week to get it out of your system, get the withdrawals over, and you'll be good. And so that's what he did, and I told my wife, was honest with her, somewhat honest. I don't think I was 100% honest, but I told her that I had a problem.
As honest as you could be at that time.
As honest as I could be.
And it was the first time you had admitted to her, or really anyone, other than your doctor, that you had a problem?
Yeah. And went through that first week. It was terrible. She had 3 kids, a newborn. I couldn't help her. I was curled up in a ball, chills, throwing up, diarrhea. Made it through the week, and I was like, "Hey, we made it. Me and her, we made it."
You weathered the storm.
I weathered the storm. I did what the doctor said, and I'm good. And that lasted for a month. And then I ran into the guy that was selling them to me. I said, let me grab 10 of them, because I got it now. It's not. And in 2 days, I was calling him up. I went through those 10 pills, calling up, getting more, and I was right back into it. And that was the longest time. For about 10 years that I stayed clean from the substances that month.
Mm. Juliana, what was what were you thinking? You have a newborn at home with 2 other kids and you see him there. Could you talk for a second about what that was like for you as his wife?
I think I was kind of sick and tired because when my little boy was born, I pretty much have to drive him everywhere. And I have, my little girls and my little boy that are just, crying and this and that. I think I was just, very tired. So, and it's interesting because he told me, but I didn't have, any knowledge of, what those pills are. Because I am, the opposite of Josh. I was born in Dominican Republic from a single mother, blah, blah, blah. Behind my house, people used to, do drugs, but I never really got into it, so I have, no idea of anything. So I thought, after a week, we're going to be good.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. After the week, I remember asking him, I think after a month, I was like, wait, I don't know too much about this, but I'm pretty sure it takes more than a week for you to get over something like this. So are you doing it again? And he looked at me, he's like, no, I'm good. I am just good.
But you weren't good.
No. I was right back into it.
I
Right back
believe
into it
him.
by the time
I
she
thought he
asked.
was just good.
Well, you had your hands full being
Yeah.
a mom and taking care of these kids, and obviously not just like an average person. We don't know the signs and the details of drug abuse if we've never been exposed to it. So you were just wanting to take his word for it.
Yeah, and like let's be honest, I'm from another country, so I'm here by myself. Like
Yeah.
I pretty much I have my first child like 6 months after we got married, and pretty quick. So I didn't really have a time to be social or even learn the language. So I pretty much we got married, have my child pretty much, and I stopped working, stay home all the time. So it's not like I didn't know anything outside my home, and I go out with Josh, do this with Josh, everything with him. Yeah, and just in La La Land, just doing my thing.
Yeah, busy
Yeah.
thing.
But just still knowing something was going on.
Yeah.
But
You
I
had
didn't
a
know
feeling
what.
that something
Yeah.
was going on.
Yeah.
And so you're back into it after a month. And how long does this run last?
I would say that run. So it's kind of hard because I would say I tried to quit, but the only time I would try to quit is because the market dried up. I was running out, and so I'd be like, oh, I don't want to go through those withdrawals again. So I would have a lot of those here and there. I'd go through withdrawals for a day, and I'd find some because I was the worst of the worst. It occupied everything. I found it because I did not want to go through those withdrawals. And it's interesting because the first reason, talking about being a father, a husband, all those pressure, business owner, those pills made me better at everything. They made me a better husband, a funner dad, a better businessman. I could talk better to people. I could sell. They made me better at everything. So at first I needed them just to survive and be better. And then the physical withdrawals, I avoided those at all cost because they're terrible.
But the reality is it doesn't make you better.
No, it did. No, I'm amazed. Now that I look back, I'm amazed that I was able to hang on to anything in my life.
And I think that's an interesting point of your story is that, for me, my whole world came to a crashing end. I lost my job, went to jail and all that. But you managed to stay out of the court system and keep your job and your wife. How did that all happen?
Honestly, it is just, it's God. It was God. God intervened. And because I've thought about that. I have friends that have passed away from this. I know people that have lost everything, and I should have. There's no doubt in my mind. And the only thing I think of is that God has a purpose for me to help other people.
Now, a lot of times on this show, we talk about someone's rock bottom. And that's the moment when they look in the mirror, they look up to the heavens, they look anywhere for an answer because they know what they're doing is not going to get any better. And so something's got to change. What was your rock bottom?
So fast forward a few years, I ended up getting into heroin because a drug dealer, one of the pills that they dried up and they were getting hard. There was a bunch of Roxy 30s that had hit the market that were laced with fentanyl, and it was dangerous. And it got really dark for me. I was in a terrible place. We couldn't get stuff. He introduced me into heroin, started snorting it and doing stuff like that. And then one night, about 2 weeks before my real rock bottom, I overdosed on a bunch of those laced pills with fentanyl. And once again, I think there was some intervention there. I remember I took a handful. It was probably about 130, 140 milligrams of combination. It was a cocktail Percocets, Roxys, and that was between swallowing them and snorting them. And the reason is I was so sick of, I was just dark. I just so gloomy. My life was gloomy. I looked at my life and I should have been so happy, but I wasn't. I had everything. I had an amazing wife. I had these beautiful kids, have a business. I'm successful, and I just was not happy. And
you're checking all the boxes.
Yeah, all the boxes.
Was that a suicide attempt?
So I never got suicidal, but I definitely did not care. I remember, so I took them, and I remember as they were going down my throat, what did I just do? Like, what did I just? But they weren't working either. The effect was completely gone. And so it was a mix of I want to be happy. I want to feel good. These aren't working. Nothing's working. Heroin none of it was working. And so I didn't care either. I didn't care. The way I was using, I did not care if I was going to die.
So when you say you overdosed, what physically happened to your body?
So physically, I go up, I got scared, go up, sit down on my couch. Everyone was asleep. I said, okay, I'm gonna sit here. I'll just wait for it to kick in. I'll manage it because I can control everything, you know? And so I sat there 10 minutes. I was out, cold. And the next thing I remember is waking up in the middle of the night, gasping for air. And I remember touching my lips. They were ice cold. I couldn't get oxygen. I said, I got to get up. I got to get up. I'm going to die. I got to get up. And I went back out. The next thing I remember is waking up in the morning and feeling like an elephant slept on me all night long. My body just hurt. My eye, everything hurt. And I woke up to my kids running downstairs, getting ready for school, which that's how they would have found their dad, laying dead on the couch, is running out to school.
Now, you said that was 2 weeks prior to your real rock bottom.
So that's 2 weeks. So kept using just as much, depressed.
So that didn't scare you?
It scared me, but I could just use past it. I could get past that. I get past that fear. I'll just be smarter this time, be more careful.
And isn't this true, Casey? Josh, I really appreciate you being so open and honest about your story. But here are two really big things that somebody who isn't abusing and addicted to substances would think would be the rock bottom. First would be essentially missing the birth of your son, feeling like you just missed out on that and you didn't get to participate in it the way you wanted to. Then the next one definitely would be the realization that, oh my gosh, my kids could have come down and found their dad dead on their way to school. What an awful thing that would be. And yet that addiction still had such a grip on you that you kept using. I mean, that's we hear that to some degree, don't we, Casey?
Well, it relates with my story. I mean, there were so many times in my marriage and in my family where my mom would go, is this your rock bottom? Or my ex-wife would go, are we done?
It? Yeah.
And in my head, I'd go, yeah, I think this is it. But you're right. You weather through it. And you think, well, maybe that wasn't the rock bottom because I got through it. I got past it.
Yeah.
And I think to the non-addict brain, they go, yeah, that's a rock bottom.
Right. Right. But that just proves the power of addiction, that it can just take over your mind. And like Josh, you said, you felt like, oh, I can control it. I made it through. I can control it again. So what happened next?
Well, and you think you learn, right? Well, I learned. I won't do that again. I won't take a handful of pills. What the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
And so so there's actually three. I wanted to mention one more. There's three because I do want the listeners to understand how it's just crazy. So it's interesting because my wife used to always tell me, why can't you quit for our kids? Why can't you quit for me? Do you not care about me? Don't you love our kids? And that just, talk about open up the floodgates of shame. Because, I do love them, and I should be able to quit.
And you wanted to.
I wanted to. And I had my little girl when she was about 2 or 3.
She was like 3.
3. She, I had one of the pills in my truck. I got out to go check on a job, and I came back and it was gone. And I freaked out, called the ambulance. She had taken, so my little girl almost died because of my addiction.
Wow.
And luckily they got there quick enough. They got her with the charcoal medicine we're up. This is how sick it's so sick, this disease. We're up in the emergency room. As soon as the doctor told me she was good, I walked out to the parking lot to call my dealer because that was my last pill.
Wow.
It's sick.
I mean, it shows you the power of it.
Yeah, it changes your brain. You lose. I mean, the way I feel when you're telling that story is that you'd lost who you were. You were no longer in control of yourself.
I want to go to what he's saying is because my ex-wife used to say that, why can't you quit for the kids? Why can't you quit for me? And the thing I found in my recovery, and then once again I say my recovery, is that I truly believe you can't quit for anybody else. Mm-hmm. You have to quit for yourself. And that's the way this works. And it doesn't mean that you don't love your kids. It doesn't mean that you don't love your spouse. It doesn't mean you don't love your family. That's the kind of the weird area is that I love you and I don't want that to be questioned. I just don't love myself right now and I can't fix it, and that's what I'm trying to do.
And there's also the element of that this is a physiological disease. It has changed a person's physiology. You've been using essentially since age 12. You'd had periods of time without it. It had gotten the opioid epidemic is a real thing. It's takes over your brain's ability to function, make decisions, delay gratification, and change your own behavior. And so it's part emotional and psychological, of course, and it's very much physiological. And a person just like you can't control yourself fully when you're completely intoxicated, you really can't control yourself ultimately when you are in the throes of an opioid addiction.
Yeah. Project Recovery will be right back. So you've overdosed on your couch, your daughter has taken a pill, and those two aren't your rock bottom.
No.
What's your rock bottom?
So another quick thing. Sorry, Case.
No, you're all right.
But I just want to, because I think a lot of people look at it like, oh, we don't feel. But like when I was driving up behind the ambulance, following my daughter, I lost it. I just started bawling. And lost it because I loved her so much. Oh, sorry, I'm choking up.
No, it's okay.
I loved her so much, and I didn't. To think that I did that to her killed me, and that I was going to lose her over this, and it absolutely destroyed me. And it shocked me that I was out in the parking lot after I found out she was okay, calling the guy to see if he had more. And so, we feel, and it's just those substances kick in and just numb it, and that's what we use them for.
I think they kick in, they numb it, and they take over.
Yeah,
I mean, there was times that in my addiction where I would say, I'm not getting beer, and before I knew it, I was on the back deck with a beer in my hand, going, how did this happen? Yeah. I was there. We had a conversation in the mirror. We both agreed that we're not doing this, but here I am, got a beer in my hand.
Yeah.
And it was.
And Josh brings up a really great point, which we touched on earlier, and that is, you learn how to deal with your problems as you're growing up, deal with difficult feelings and shame and guilt and anger and sadness. And if you don't learn to deal with them in a healthy way, those are so powerful. You'll learn to deal with them in an unhealthy way. And yeah, I don't doubt, Josh, that you didn't want to feel that extreme shame and fear of the realization of potentially losing your daughter, but instead of getting out of it, you went back into it to cover up those feelings, right?
Yeah, exactly. So go back to Casey's question, my final rock bottom, which you think all three of those would be good options.
They would be great options.
So it was Mother's Day of 2017, down in my garage prepping my drug to use because I woke up and I was going to be the dad and the husband of the day. I was going to cook breakfast.
And at this point, the pain pills have moved to heroin. Mm-hmm. And so were you shooting it, smoking it?
So off and on. So I don't come from a drug world, which another blessing because I'm amazed I didn't kill myself, shooting it. I know what I was doing. I was trusting a drug dealer to tell me how to shoot it up safely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I was shooting it, and it is different. And so this time I was prepping it to snort it. So I was snorting it, shooting it off and on, and getting it ready. And my wife came out of the garage because she did always have a suspicion. That's one thing she always had. She was always wondering what was going on.
An intuition, maybe, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Always. And so I thought I snuck out of the garage, and she came out, and I was vaping too. And she came out, and, "What are you doing? Are you vaping?" Got mad at me, grabbed the vapor and threw it, and she left. And it kicked in right there for some reason that, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And with everything in me I didn't want to use, ended up using. I used still. Went upstairs and grabbed my wife, and this was the turning point for me, because this is the first time I reached out for help. I went up to her and I said, "I need help. I don't know. I can't stop. I don't know." I was scared I was going to die. I was scared I was going to lose everything. I was scared, and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's when I said I need help. And that's when we got together. She called some people. We got checked into the DATC, the detox. I went in detox for a few days and got into a treatment center where.
And so this is 2017, Mother's Day. Your wife finds you vaping in the garage. You do heroin. You go up and you ask her for help. Then you go to the detox, and then you go to this DATC, or what was it?
Or went to the detox and then treatment.
Okay. And so what kind of program did they do in there for you?
So I can't remember the word for it, but it's kind of like you explore your options. It's not 12-step. They exposed you to a lot of things that you could just pick and choose what worked for you. So I was at my bottom. I'd hit bottom, and I believed wholeheartedly that these guys were going to save me. These guys, I had all hope in this treatment center. They were going to help me. My counselor was going to figure out what in the world was wrong with me, and I was going to come out of there in 30 days and be good.
I think a lot of people go into a rehab facility like that, where I was in there with a couple of people, and the guys would come in, and they would look at their therapist, and I go, "Fix me."
Yeah.
And just go, "Fix me."
Yeah,
There's something wrong with me. I don't know what it is. You guys are the professionals. Now fix me. Now, we've known after doing this podcast and myself going through a program, that's not how it works.
No, we sometimes refer to that mentality as the medical model, and the medical model is great when it's appropriate. So if you broke your leg, you go into the doc, you say, "Hey, doc, fix me." The doc says, "Okay, lay there and I'll fix your leg," and you're good to go. And a lot of things work that way. But you know what? Things that have to do with mental health and substance abuse and treatment don't. You have to be just as, or I should say, more invested in the process than the therapist. The therapist can't work magic.
I remember sitting down with my therapist for the first time, and I was kind of giving him some BS answers, because you said it. We become good shapeshifters. We become big liars. We become ways to manipulate the situation. And I was trying to manipulate the situation. And my therapist, Eddie, from Pinnacle Recovery Center, goes, "Hey, listen, I don't want your sobriety more than you do. So unless you have any skin in the game, we can just sit here for an hour."
Yeah.
Because I'm not getting any. I'm sober. I don't need this help. I'm here to help you. And if you don't want it, I'm not going to force you to it.
Yeah.
And so you said you went in there and you want them to fix you. And did they fix you?
No. I mean, it was awesome because I got 30 days clean, which I couldn't do by myself. I had an amazing counselor that helped me and related to me a lot. And the thing that I realized there is I didn't know how to be honest. I really didn't understand the concept. Like 100% honest, I didn't even know that existed. I didn't understand that concept. So I got in, and I went into treatment with two things very heavily on my mind. Divorce was out there, and mostly it was because she deserves so much more than me. Like, she deserves more than this. And maybe if we cut it off now, she can get, And then I was definitely done with the church. I was coming out and telling my family, everybody, I'm done, because that was my source of shame in my mind. And so went in and we had an autobiography that we had to write. And they put us on blackout. So for a week, or until we got that auto done, we couldn't talk to our families. So I was withdrawn anyways. Even after detox, you still go through that. I wasn't sleeping. So for 4 or 5 days, that's all I did is I wrote my auto. And I was going to give that to my counselor, and he was going to fix me. So that's the first time I was honest about everything. My deepest, darkest secrets went into that auto. And it's funny that you said that, because right at the end of it, it says, "Help me, please." I finished it off, and that's what I left for my counselor, "Help me, please." So he read it. We talked about a few things and had a good experience in treatment. I learned a lot. My brain works to where I like to understand things. So I started to understand, and that makes sense. And that's why I do things. And I was not going to waste that time. I had to cash pay the whole thing. My insurance wanted me to overdose and get hospitalized and survive that overdose before they would pay anything. Yeah. So we were cash pay. I was leaving my wife in a terrible spot. I was going to take advantage of this time. And so 2 days before I checked out, we're sitting there in a group setting, and my counselor looks at me, and I thought I dodged. I saw a few people read their autos, and I was like, I got away with not reading my auto. That's awesome. He goes, "Josh, I need you to run back to your room and grab your auto." And I said, no, we aren't going to do that. And he goes, "No, I need you to do it." Talks me into it. I go back, I get it, and this is just the deepest, darkest stuff that I've hid from everybody. And now he's going to read it to a group of 9 people I just barely met. And I start going through it, and I got into something that was super hard when I was a kid. I got blamed for burning down the church in a small town, and just lost it. Started bawling, and it was interesting because everyone was sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for me to make a big confession. And my counselor goes, "Well, so did you burn the church down?" I said, "No, I didn't." But it had so much pain, and so we go through that, and I was just sweating, and the whole time going through that, I was like, I need to get back to my room and get away and pray, talk to God. I need to get away from here. So finally the hour's up. I pretty much picked up my stuff, ran in there, hit my knees, and this is where really the turning point was for me. And how I look at it, and I look at it now, I was truthful, 100%. I was honest, and I had hope in something greater than me for the first time for a long time. And I hit my knees, and I had the amazing experience. I felt what my wife felt through all this. And it's hard to explain, but I felt that it wasn't. She loved me. She loved me. She wanted to be with me. She just wanted me to be me. And it wasn't how I had imagined it, to where I needed to get away from her, divorce her to help her. And I had all these amazing feelings, and then a desire right from the get-go has always been, I want to help people. I feel like that's what my story is about. I want to help. And so I felt that if either way I was going to be able to help people, no matter what. But if I stayed in the church, there's a little bit better platform that I could help a few more people with my story. And then also, it didn't, forget everything, all the misconceived ideas and doctrine, all the stuff I had that I have developed my whole life about church and God. Forget it and just work on my relationship with God. That's it.
So you dropped to your knees and you prayed. And in your prayer, did you ask for guidance? Did you ask for, or is this just kind of a self-realization?
I don't think I said anything. I think I just barely hit my knees, and I was bawling, and it just, that's what came to me. Those two experiences. That's what I felt. And so I didn't. And so once again, I thought you had to say this nice, beautiful prayer for God to hear you. He knew. He knew what was going on. Just spoke with my heart.
And so you finished the program. And then where does Josh's story go from there?
So did some IOP, committed. I wasn't going to be a 12-step guy. I wasn't going to be I think I thought I had it figured out. So I went through IOP for a few months, and then I committed to 90 and 90. In the recovery world, that's 90 meetings, 12-step meetings in 90 days, which was a big commitment for me because I have a family. I have a wife, had a family, have a business. All this stuff I've neglected for a very long time. I wanted to catch up and make up for lost time. I committed to that, and it was awesome.
And so, I mean, you're from a small town, 90 meetings, and each meeting is roughly about an hour long, and you've got to find 90 of them around this small town. And was that a challenge?
You know, that's what's amazing that I see is there's a meeting every day. And I was going to AA, I was going to NA, and the challenge was balancing life because most of them were at night around 7. So I found some nooners that I could go to. So I hit up the nooners, for lunch at work and stuff. I did need to get creative, which helped me. That was a cool part of the 90 and 90 is I needed to get creative and make it happen. And I could commit to something and do it. That was hard.
So you did 90 and 90, but your story takes a little different turn too, because a lot of people might not know this, but the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also has a 12-step program. Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about that.
So I dabbled in that program before. When I came out, I hit a lot of AA and stuff. And the cool thing about that is I came to understand God a lot more through AA and NA at that time of my life, because I was like, wow, that guy's up there, F this, F that, da-da-da-da, and I love God and God loves me. And I felt it. I was like, wow, God does love him. I thought you had to do X, Y, Z for God to love you, and he's not doing any of those. And so I learned, no, God loves me, and it was cool. And then so I went into the LDS. I stayed active in the church, went to my Sunday meetings, and I started going a lot more to the LDS church. And I was going to a meeting once a week during that 90 and 90 of the LDS, and it really sunk in that was the meeting for me. It was going to be it just felt right.
They call that a home group. You find a group that you really relate to, that makes sense to you, that you feel at home. And so that became your home group?
It did. Yep, it became my home group. Got a sponsor out of that group, and started working the steps really, really good, and really looking in that. That's where recovery treatment for me got me some clean time and got me interested in recovery. And I had a saying a guy told me, an old timer in one of the meetings said, treatment's for discovery, and 12-step and a program, whatever your program is like, is for recovery. And I believe that. So that's what treatment did for me. And then once I got really involved in a program, then I started learning about myself. I started understanding. I was going through life, and I had experiences, and I had a program that would help me step back and think instead of just reacting. And I'd think and meet cool people, and then I really stuck into those LDS meetings because they stuck with me a little bit.
How are the LDS 12 steps different from non-LDS 12 steps? Are they pretty similar?
So the LDS program they used the Alcoholic Anonymous steps, and they have changed them. It's the same pattern. So the biggest difference is it's a workbook. So you can go in and you can read through, and every time they work on a step, you read through it, you talk about it, you have the group sharing, and you go home and there's a workbook. It's kind of the biggest difference is they're direct about who their higher power is. It's Heavenly Father, it's God, and it's Jesus Christ.
And so in AA, there is a spiritual aspect to that where you're trying to give up control to a higher power. Is that right?
Yes.
But in the LDS version of those steps, they're very specific about who that higher power is.
Yep. That's the biggest difference. And AA is a very spiritual program. Mm-hmm. It's but it's a higher power, and that works awesome for a lot of people, obviously, because AA helps so many people. and that's why the church saw something there. I feel like, and then they went and adopted those and put that in, and they even in the front of the manual it has the AA steps written down, the 12 steps, and how they, so you can see how they've kind of changed them a little bit and a little bit more direct with the teachings of the church with the 12 steps, which has been awesome for me.
Now, do you still live in the small town?
We live right outside of it, the West Haven.
And how has the community responded to your recovery?
There's taboo. There's still a very strong stigma around addiction. So in our calling now, me and my wife have been called as missionaries in this program, and we have a meeting once a week that we do, and we go. Part of it is we go around and we're trying to inform the stakes and the bishops around us. And it's interesting because I looked at the list and I know a lot of them. And I sent out an email and didn't get any. I got a few responses, and it's been awesome. We're going to go and talk this Sunday to a few wards, but a lot of them didn't respond. No response, no email, and so there is still a huge misunderstanding, some taboo. The small community, I've heard things. People say stuff about me, but that's part of it. It was going to be hush-hush. We weren't going to tell anybody. We were very afraid that it was going to hurt the business. Our kids were going to feel an effect from it. But we both have obviously become a lot more comfortable with it and comfortable with the fact that we really want to help people not go through as deep. Because I got really deep into my addiction, I think, because I didn't know anywhere to turn. I didn't know anything about recovery. And when I finally met somebody, even though it was 2 years after I had met him, it was a guy in recovery that is a huge friend to me still, and got us into like the treatment and all that scene. It was 2 years after I met him, but he's the first person I met that was honest about his recovery, his problem, open about it, and he ultimately is the one that probably facilitated hugely in saving my life.
And in the recovery world, so much of it is giving back, and I think that's what you guys are doing so greatly. What have you seen the change in your husband since his sober days?
Oh man, he's more alert. He doesn't fall asleep when I'm talking to him. He's his mood. He's like happier. Like he can actually like answer to a question like making sense.
I don't want to ask you. I'm going to ask the question. I shouldn't say I don't want to, because I'm going to. Because a lot of people don't keep their marriages together when one is going through an addiction like this. At any point, did you set an ultimatum, throw your hands up, and say, "Listen, I'm done. I'm out"?
Oh yes, like a lot.
What kept you staying?
I don't know. I think I was just like hoping. And of course, I love him, so I was like hoping like something would get better, and that was kind of I think it helps a lot too that I didn't have family close, because at one point I would be, I'm going with my mom, but I didn't have that, so I needed to stay and I wanted to stay and help him, but to a point. And after that, I started getting into it, kind of like trying to know a little bit more.
Educated. Yeah.
And not being like, if you don't stop, I'm going to leave you. Like that didn't work out. And now I know why it would never work out. But I have a better knowledge of everything now. So,
do you have any advice for other partners, spouses who have a spouse going through addiction, based on what you learned? Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, pretty much just like go to the meetings with your husband, and they have meetings just for the, for like the support meeting for like the family. Yes.
Al-Anon.
Yeah, but just go to the meeting with your spouse and just like get to know a little bit more, because it's easier to be just, I don't get it. I don't know it. So I never have an addiction, so I don't know.
So you can't use that as an excuse and just be checked out. You need to participate, and yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because the more you know, the more you, of course, get like, oh, so this is why. And maybe you are not going to understand all the way because you don't have an addiction, but like you can understand enough so you can help your partner if you want to stay.
I like
together.
what Josh said is that, there is a stigma out there and there is a taboo. And that's why one of the main reasons we started this podcast was to get a conversation going. But I really think an education needs to be had on all parts, because it really is. I mean, it's for someone who doesn't have an addictive brain or, an addict mind to go, why can't you just stop?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can tell you right now that almost every addict wanted to stop at some point.
Yeah. That's the common thread.
And had conversations and even looked for it. But it's not that simple. We need an education out there for everybody involved.
Yeah, because it doesn't, it doesn't make sense with so much at risk, your family, your spouse, your business, your life. It doesn't make sense that you wouldn't stop. But that's where the education comes in, is to teach us that there are a lot of dimensions to why a person can't just stop something that's so self-destructive.
And Josh, if we could leave the audience with one bit of advice from you, what would you say?
I would say, if we could all just start being a little bit more empathetic and being through honesty. And that's the honest truth. If everybody has something going on, it might not be a substance, it might not be this or that, but life isn't easy. Everybody's got something going on. So let's just be a little bit more open and let's just share and be a little bit more empathetic with each other and try to understand. If you want to ask a question, something for me is so awkward when people are just awkward around me when it comes up. Ask me. Talk to me about it. Like, try to find out about people. And just through honesty, let's just try to understand each other a little bit more and open up is what I would say.
Awesome. And thank you both for coming in and being so honest. Final words with Dr. Matt?
I guess one thing, if you're somebody who's struggling with anxiety or depression, or if you think your child at 12, 13, 14 is struggling with those things, reach out and get help. There are other types of help that really can turn those things around so that you or your child don't turn to substances. And so maybe start with your pediatrician and get some referrals to get some help, because I think, like Josh's story, that played a part, and it does for so many people at a young age trying to deal with that anxiety and depression can lead into substance abuse.
Those developmental years. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. If you know somebody who needs some help, have them do what I did. Give Pinnacle Recovery Center a call. Dr. Matt, thank you very much. Tilton for running the show. And, of course, both of you guys for being so honest. Project Recovery is a KSL podcast. If you like it, please love it, rate it, and subscribe.